All right, my clock says 3. So I'd like to get started then. Welcome everybody from as far away as London and as close as other locations here in Michigan. We're going to be talking about overcoming distance with ODR, hearing the perspective of the 74th District Court in Bay County, Michigan. I want to introduce our speaker, and then I will give you, then we'll spend some time together talking about what they've done in Bay and get your questions answered. So we'll talk for about the first 40 minutes of the hour we have together, and we're going to reserve that last 1/3 of the hour for your questions. Some people, you sent in questions when you registered. Thank you very much. We will make sure to get to those. And as we go, feel free to drop questions into that Q&A widget in your Zoom bar so that we can get your questions answered. Because in my opinion, from doing this a couple times, the thing that you're here for is to get your questions answered. And we want to make sure you have time for that. So, So hello and welcome to Overcoming Distance with ODR, Rural Perspective. Our speaker today, our presenter today is Magistrate Janice Doner. She is the magistrate at the 74th District Court in Bay County, Michigan. She has a background in criminal justice from Wayne State University. She has her law degree from the Detroit College of Law, which is now Michigan State Law School. She served as an existing prosecuting attorney in Bay County for over 11 years. And she's been the attorney magistrate since June 2008. And she also serves as a juvenile referee for the 18th Circuit Court, the Family Division, since January 2010. So Magistrate Doner has held several roles throughout the court, which I think makes her well suited to sharing the process and the outreach that the court has done for this program.
All right, thank you, Donry. Welcome, everyone. I hope I can give you some information, answer some questions on what we're doing and what you possibly may choose to do in your courts.
I'm going to start by just describing a little bit of the motivation for online dispute resolution. And then we're going to hand it back to the magistrate for really describing what they put in place there and some of the rationale behind it. So if you're here today on this webinar that's specifically entitled Overcoming Distance with ODR, you're probably here because you understand that there are barriers for people to come and engage with the legal system in person. Those barriers could be needing to work, like in that picture on the right, needing to do childcare, like in that picture on the left, or maybe because you don't have transportation, like that picture in the middle. And there's also psychological barriers beyond the sort of physical or economic barriers as well that people are dealing with when they're faced with engaging with the court system, either for a ticket or for whatever they have going. And so these challenges may mean that people don't, they might avoid it, they might not be able to make it, or they might not get their day in court. And so online dispute resolution, this is a definition from the IGES Court Component Model Work Group. ODR is a digital space where parties can convene to work out or attempt to work out a resolution to their dispute or case. And I should have said at the very beginning, I'm so sorry, my name is Dunry and I work for Matterhorn by Court Innovations, and we provide online dispute resolution software. And in this vein, these are some of the case types that people are using our software for. And there are other systems as well that are used similarly, but here, so ability to pay, traffic, and warrant are the 3 case types we're going to talk about today with Magistrate Doner. And ODR is also commonly used for things in mediation, and in family court. And those are in gray here on this slide because we are not going to talk about them today because they're not being used right now for Magistrate Doner's court. This slide here is right at the very bottom of that corner, there's this JTC Research Bulletin, which is ODR for courts. And it is really a wonderful resource that the Joint Technology Committee has created about courts using ODR across the nation. And there are 5 specific benefits that they call out in this paper. And they're access. So ODR, online dispute resolution, helps increase access. Efficiency, it helps increase efficiency both for the court as well as for the citizen. It speeds, can speed enforcement or collections. It increases fairness, and it can improve customer satisfaction. So I would encourage you to dig into the JTC Resource Bulletin, and we've used that to organize some of our presentation today about the benefits that the district court in Bay County has achieved with their ODR system. All right, so this is the transition slide for me to stop talking and for Magistrate Doner to start sharing her experience. And I wanted to just give you guys a little bit in the next slide about Bay County. And for those of you who don't know, Bay County is up in the near the thumb of Michigan in that beautiful big bay there. The Orange County, and as well as that inset map to the right is the county itself. And that blue, the lighter blue city is the city of Bay City. And then the next slide is a picture of the website for the court. So can you tell us a little bit about the court, about what jurisdiction it has and the size of the court?
So Bay County has 3 elected district court judges, and then the 1 magistrate, or 1 attorney magistrate, and now share my position with juvenile division. And then we have a non-attorney magistrate who is also our deputy court administrator. And district court has jurisdiction over civil cases up to a value of $25,000. Small claims, looks like our website needs to be updated because now the jurisdictional limit on small claims cases is $6,000. All criminal cases begin in district court. Felonies are handled through preliminary examination and then bound over to circuit court. Misdemeanors remain in district court, and district court also handles all traffic matters, which is where we mostly use our ODR for, is the traffic matters. Our caseload in 2017 was we had 2,463 misdemeanor filings, civil infractions of 11,365. Out of those misdemeanors, operating under the influence of alcohol or drugs counted for 553 cases. We've seen a little bit of a shift in the last couple of years where we've had, I think partly due to the increase of the number of state troopers that are on the road. Also, our sheriff's department has expanded a little, so our traffic cases are going up, our civil infractions in particular. So that's kind of one of the reasons why we decided to get into offering something online. I thought you were going to say, Doner, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, well, I was going to, yeah, I was about to ask you what your motivation was for giving people an online way to work with the court, and you just got there. Were there any other reasons why you decided to do this?
It kind of started at the state court administrator level, contacted our chief judge, Dawn Kleida, because she's a little more innovative. She likes technology. She's not afraid to try new things. And they asked us if we would be interested in looking at some kind of online dispute resolution for our traffic matters. And then we kind of expanded it into some of the warrant issues or the failure to pay issues, because a lot of times people that can't afford to pay their fines also can't afford to come to court. And they're afraid. They think, you know, there's a warrant out for them. They think if they walk into the courthouse, they're going to be arrested, taken into custody. And even though that's not usually what happens, it's a lot easier to go online and say, what can I do about this? And have that security of not having to come to the court. So, and we also, with our numbers going up and staff cuts, by doing more things online, made us operate more efficiently.
Okay, so I heard you say, you know, you're interested in operating more efficiently. You want to help people be comfortable interacting with the court to resolve their issue. So that those sound like I imagine there's other people on this this webinar who are thinking about those same things and evaluating whether this could work for them. I'm curious. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm curious if you have a sense of what the farthest in your experience as the attorney magistrate or as a prosecutor, what the farthest you saw somebody travel to the court to participate in a case like the ones that are done now online.
Well, Bay County is right on I-75. So pretty much you can start I-75 in Florida and end up in the UP, the Upper Peninsula. So we get a lot of people that are traveling through our county, either on business or for pleasure. So I have seen people from all over the state of Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula, Lower Peninsula. I've also had people out of state. And it's particularly beneficial for the people out of state to be able to take care of their tickets online. Before, they would just pay their tickets because they didn't really have any other options. You know, I've had people from Florida, Arizona, California, Tennessee, you know, just all over, that for some reason were in Bay County and received a ticket, and they're able to resolve those.
I'm curious if you have a memory of whether you know where the person was that's used it the farthest, the ODR system, where they were.
I know I had, well,
I guess you don't know maybe because they're not
exactly sure, but I've had multiple states. I just had, you know, someone from Connecticut who was online, and I know, like I said, I've had Florida, some Ohio, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So people from other states have definitely been using our system. A lot of people from the Detroit area find it a lot easier than having to, you know, make a trip here.
I think that maybe the next thing to do might be to walk people through at least the start of the system on the next page. Can you do this?
Yes. So when you're issued a citation in Bay County, right, on your citation, it tells you if you would like to mediate your case online, and then we have the website to go to, which would lead you to the page that you're seeing now. Also, when someone calls into our court, if they ask about what they can do for any possible reduction or to have their case reviewed, they are referred to the website as well. They still have the option to ask for an in-person hearing or in-person pretrial conference, but we find the vast majority prefer to do it online. It's faster, it's easier, it's so much more convenient.
Can you tell us a little bit about what types of cases go through these workflows? What's eligible?
For the traffic cases, those are all civil infractions. We haven't reached the point yet where we're doing any misdemeanors, although I know that's being explored in some other counties. So for civil infractions, what our prosecutor designated a list of civil infractions that they would review online. because it's up to the prosecutor to, be part of this. So if you have a qualifying charge, you can go online and you can ask for your ticket to be reviewed, and then you'll see if you're going to get some kind of offer of reduction or not. We also do the warrant tab there, and what that means is if you have a warrant for either failing to pay your fines and costs or failing to appear in court, you can go online and request that that warrant be canceled and that either a payment plan be set or an appearance date be issued. And then the past due part, that is for people who haven't paid their fines on time. And in that section, there's also some ability to pay that's in there where they can provide financial information so that I can review that and make a determination of, sometimes they may qualify for a reduction in their fines or what I can set for a monthly payment plan. So most of the people in the past due, they haven't gone to warrant yet. They're trying to be proactive so that they don't get a warrant and they can set up some kind of payment arrangement.
So I think we can go to the next screen. So when somebody does click that traffic button, what happens next?
Right. So then they have to provide the information, as you see there, their driver's license number, what state it's from, and date of birth, and then the system can check to see if they have the citation. Our citations upload daily, and sometimes people will go online before they've even uploaded. People are looking for their ticket, within minutes or hours of receiving it. So once they can go on there, try to find their ticket, and then they go through whether or not their violation is something that can be handled online, or if it's a violation that they would have to appear on or simply pay. Then they ask the questions about the review and whether or not they're willing to take responsibility to any reduced charges, and also whether or not they're willing to do online traffic school if it's offered to them. Our prosecutor for first offenses most often will offer, if you take a traffic class, then they'll reduce your charge to a non-moving violation. It won't go on your driving record. So that's why they're asking if you would do that, because if you say no, then they're not going to make you that offer. Mm-hmm. Then there's also the section that allows the person to tell us whatever it is they'd like to know. A lot of people don't put anything in there. Other people will state either what happened, why it happened, anything else that they believe is important for the court to know. And just, it's really individual. I've seen everything from nothing to paragraphs and what people are writing. And then they have to provide their information. So we need the contact of how do they want to be contacted, through email or through cell phone with a text. And then they submit their request, and then it moves on to the next level, which is how our workflow goes. So we start with the person that received the citation, and they initiate the process. If they are not rejected because of they have a violation that can't be reviewed, then their request goes to our prosecutor's office. And there's 2 assistant prosecutors that review those. And when they review it, they have the information on what the original charge was. They also have access to the person's driving record through our Secretary of State. And there's also a tab for them to review for Judicial Data Warehouse, which will provide some information that's not on a driving record, such as if a person has already had other tickets that were reduced to non-moving violations, and they can take all of that information into consideration. And then our prosecutors have created a list of possible reductions, because they have to have a drop-down box in which they can make their selections. So first they'll select if they're going to make an offer, what that is going to be, and then whether or not they're going to be requiring the traffic school. So anything that they will make a recommendation on then comes to the magistrate or court's screen. And that's mostly I review those. However, our non-attorney magistrate will also review those if I'm not available. And I just look over what the prosecutor's offered. Sometimes if they have information in there about financial hardship, maybe I'll take that into consideration as to whether or not the standard fine should be assessed, or if there might be a reduction in that. And then I approve the offer that's been made by the prosecutor. That information is then relayed to the person who received the ticket, and then they have the ability to either accept or reject the offer that was made, and they also have the ability to pay their citation right online. And then once they've accepted, then the court is notified, our system is updated once they've made their payments, and if they're put on traffic school, that codes are all included in there. And that's pretty much where it usually ends.
So at this time, we're going to dive a little deeper and talk less about the process and a little more about the outcomes that the court has realized, as well as what the customer satisfaction surveys have informed the court about the success of the program from the public's in the public's eyes. But I want to encourage you to drop any questions you have about the process or about anything you hear into the Q&A widget. We did have one question earlier from Skip about whether there would be a recording available of this webinar. And I should have said right off the bat, so thank you, Skip, for that helpful reminder. Yes, the webinar will be available for your reference in case you want to go back to it or maybe share some information with a colleague. And I believe you should receive a link from Zoom as a follow-up either 1 or 2 days after this webinar that reminds you of where that is. You can also find that information on the Matterhorn website, so getmatterhorn.com. It will be there for you as well. So I don't see any questions popping up, so you must all perfectly understand. But if you do or you don't, feel free to ask a question. All right, so remember we talked about the 5 benefits that the JTC had identified through ODR. And we're going to just go through these individually. And we're going to start with the first one, which is access. And certainly that plays into this idea of distance being a factor for some people not being able to come to court in Bay County because maybe they live in Florida or Connecticut or whatever. So we talked a little bit about access for members of the public. I'm curious if the online resolution has changed how you at the court do your work. Are there any members of that workflow we saw a second ago that work remotely or work outside of normal hours because they can?
Yes, the access, I guess I'd just like to expand. Yeah. For the people that receive the citations, I hear from a lot of people that to come to court between 8 and 5, or even call the court between 8 and 5 is difficult for them. Mm-hmm. So the fact that they can do all of this in the evening hours, on weekends, it's very helpful for them. For me, I don't have to find the time in my docket set aside for 25 pretrial conferences, which can take hours. So anytime I have free time, I can go in and I can look at the requests and I can approve those requests. It takes much less time, and If I only have time to review 5 of them, I can do that and come back to the others later. You can fit it into your schedule much more easily. I know one of our assistant prosecutors, she kind of likes to do them at the end of the day, and I'll often see that she's, making offers well past 5 o'clock. Also, I can do things at home from my laptop, and one of our assistant prosecutors, she likes to do that as well. If she's knows she's not going to be available, she may just take her laptop home and work on her reviews that way. And it's kind of at her own convenience and in comfort of not having to be here at your office. So really, it's opened up a lot of more opportunities, and we can review a lot more cases than what we have time for in our docket.
Actually, I want to just go back 1 second before we put the data up. I know when we had a conversation before today, you mentioned also that sometimes people try to use Matterhorn as the front door for the court, try to use the system as the front door for the court, and ask for things maybe that they shouldn't be. I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on that or not. I think you told the story.
Sometimes I think people are hopeful that they can do everything online when they can't, or they just aren't really reading the directions to see what it is. I know we recently had one woman who had a ticket, and she was very frustrated, and then she finally wrote in her comments, I couldn't find how to request a hearing. And so I had to answer all of these questions that I really don't want to do that. I just want a hearing. And I know it says up front, if you want a hearing date, call the court.
Right.
So she wanted to fight her ticket. She didn't want a reduction. She didn't want to admit responsibility. So some of it is, people trying to do what they can't do. And I don't know if those options will ever become available.
Yeah. I think it's just interesting that when you open up a door, people try to use it, right? And they may not always use it for what it's intended for. And that may cause frustration, but it's also just an interesting thing for me, which is why I brought it back up. So I wanted the next slide, actually, which kind of made a quick appearance, is a little bit of information from the customer surveys. And I see that Andrew Dane actually asked a question. He asked, when did we commence the ODR system, and what teething problems did you encounter? I would like to loop back and actually answer that one. Magistrate Doner, can you speak to when the ODR system started in Bay?
We started in about mid-2014, I think it was August. Mm-hmm. And, in the beginning, we found out some of it just the way that we had set it up, or what our requests were. There were a few glitches. Part of it was then just getting the police officers aware of it, so that they mentioned it to people, or people noticing it on their citation. Anytime you start a new process, there's always some kind of glitches, but we didn't have a whole lot. And I still find that most of our issues are kind of user driven, that they're putting in the wrong information, or they're not following the instructions. But as far as for the court, it was just us getting into a routine of using it and approving it, and then making sure that our systems talk to each other well, as we have the courts, software system, and then the ODR software system, and just getting those to mesh and for everything to work and update properly. And now, we were one of the earlier courts to do this, so I'm sure that it's even smoother at this point than when we started.
Yeah, you guys were in the...
When we added some of our other, like the warrants and the ability to pay, it was a pretty smooth process.
So I wanted Magistrate Doner to answer that question before I talk to the access data, because we didn't I don't believe we had these surveys right off the bat. But these surveys have been collecting since 2016. And what happens is every time someone completes a case review, whether their request for review was accepted or rejected by the court, and whether they get issued the survey. And then they come back and they provide information. And these are the results from the 74th District Courts, the surveys. And of the people who responded, about 38%, about 40% of them said they would not otherwise have been able to appear in court. I mean, that number is very consistent across all the systems that we have in place now. And we're up to about getting close to 50 across the nation. And then this number here, the pie chart on the right, shows how people are accessing the system. And this is not the court staff, but the public users of the system. And they're really using their phones, 65, 66%. If you include the folks on sort of the larger mobile devices, tablets, are coming on a mobile device, whereas only about 32% of those are on a desktop computer or laptop. And then this one shows from the analytics where people are accessing the public-facing website. So you can see there's the map on the left side is basically the Great Lakes, and Michigan is of course right in the middle, and Bay is there's a big sort of a blue dot, a darker blue dot underneath all the light blue dots, which is the center, and there's a lot of folks accessing the public-facing website, the public-facing ODR site from nearby the court. And then there's people who are accessing it from all over the Great Lakes. And then the map to the right, which is the US map, you can see that basically Michigan is completely obscured by the dots, but you also have dots in Florida and on the East Coast and on the West Coast. So people are accessing the system from all over, which is part of that promise of ODR, which is access. So geographic access as well as access by device and time. So there are questions. The second of the 5 benefits of ODR include efficiency, and wanted to check in with you, get your sense of the perception of time to resolve a case online and in person, and on the court side, how much effort is put into the in-person hearing versus the effort that is put in on your side for the online review, not hearing.
As far as the time just speaking with the person, if they come in to court for an in-person pretrial, just dealing with each person takes anywhere from just a few minutes to, if they have issues, it can take a little longer. You can be spending 10, 15 minutes with a person, and that's just for me. Once they get to me, they've already spent time waiting and then sitting down with an assistant prosecutor, explaining what their situation is, getting an offer, traveling down the hallway. So if a person's lucky for an in-person pretrial, maybe they can be in and out of our building in 20, 30 minutes. But it's not uncommon to see people who are here for an hour or more. And by doing it online, it takes them a couple minutes to do the registry. There's downtime where they're waiting for a response, but then for the prosecutor and for the court, you can review those, a minute or two per case, depending on what's happening. If the prosecutor, I think, likes to look up to accident reports and other things at times, but you're not tying up the user's time as the prosecutor's doing all of that and then sending it to me. So the efficiency is very great. We can review a lot more cases in a lot less time, and we're not tying someone up sitting around in court and waiting. And I'm not spending my time waiting for the pretrials to come to me, and that creates some dead time for me as well.
Right.
So it is much more efficient.
And then there's, thank you for that, confirming. And I think there's a couple little pieces of info. I'm gonna start doing these a little quicker because I wanna give Magistrate Doner more time and the questions more time. So I'll say quickly that these are the survey responses since 2016. And the public agrees that their case was resolved in a timely manner and that it was efficient for them. It was an easy process. So that kind of underscores the narrative as well, that the numbers bear that out. So we're going to start talking a little. We've had some questions about, one question about revenue after implementing ODR, and this gets at that question a little bit, this next slide. And are you able to talk through this one? Or did you want me to?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with all of these, but
sure. Yeah. So in this case, this is the outcome of a post-launch evaluation comparing cases that went through Matterhorn or the ODR system, and that did not, but that both types of case, both were eligible to go through. So they had the same offense codes, the same criteria on the driver that would allow it to go through Matterhorn. So these are comparable sets of cases. And of those, each case, the cases that are in blue here are the ones that went through the ODR system, and the ones that are in that sort of tan khaki color are the ones that didn't. And you can see that there's about close between I guess it's like a 13% default rate on the cases who basically came to an agreement but didn't pay their ticket on the cases that did not go through Matterhorn, whereas the ones that did, it's more between 0 and 5%, which means that there's a 74% decrease in the cases, the eligible traffic cases that had default as a final disposition, comparing the ones that did go through Matterhorn to the ones that did not go through the online system. So ODR, maybe because we can't say why, the numbers don't tell us why, we can guess that maybe it's because they're already on the system and that ability to pay, but that button is right there for them to sort of continue that process, but that they're motivated to finish when they've gone through. So we do see
from comments that people have made here, and just from what we see is once they complete the process, accept the offer, they usually just immediately pay.
Yep.
And then they don't have time to forget about it.
Right.
You have to come back to court, send in a payment, have enough cash, anything like that. Because it's amazing how many people come to court without any method of payment on them. It's like, oh, I didn't know you took a credit or debit card, so I didn't bring it, that kind of thing. So when you're sitting down and you're doing it, if you need it, you just grab your credit card and you pay.
You're ready to go. Yeah. So there's another question, and this might get back to the efficiency question, actually. I see a question from Andrew Dane. And we may not have numbers right at the tips of our tongues, but the ROI in terms of the dollar savings, ODR versus in-person hearings. I imagine that, maybe staff time is included in that. There are calculations that have been done, by this social venture fund at the University of Michigan in terms of what it saves, what it can save people for not giving up an hourly wage and not having to do the transportation. And that is a savings to the individual person going through. And this, the ROI in terms of the savings on the court side. I don't know, Magistrate Doner, if you have an answer to that question.
I'm not aware of any actual, if we've looked at trying to figure out how much it is saving. You know, because part of it is it's your court staff, and if they're not spending as much time dealing with these civil infractions, then they can be dealing with other things. You know, we're not generating notices of hearing, don't have postage expenses, we're not making files that, you know, for all of these cases that are going through ODR. So
there's savings along the process of things that aren't mailed and aren't printed. And then there is the return maybe of some time that you could spend on something else. You don't get that time back, you're still working, but you might be able to focus on something of a different, you know, that takes more, it's higher value to the court or to the citizen at that time. So there are, but yeah, it's a good question, Andrew. We need to get maybe some harder numbers there for you. Let's keep on going. Fairness is a question. I know we've, how people perceive the online system. Do you have a perception, Magistrate Doner, if the online process is as fair, more fair, less fair than an in-person process?
I think the fairness is the same, because you're still, at least from our court, you're still having a prosecutor reviewing your case, which is what you would have if you came in person. And, you know, some people are going to be unhappy because they're not going to get the offer they want, but it would happen whether they were in person or online. But I think that people are viewing it as, you know, as fair as what they would get if they came in. Yeah, that's certainly the goal. I think the you know, this next slide is from the customer survey data again, and people agree that their case was handled fairly. And you are correct in that sometimes people who disagreed that their case was handled fairly were the ones who didn't get what they wanted. So this answer is a little correlated with the outcome of their case. And I imagine that's the same in person as well as online. If we go to the next slide, we get to talk about the stories now, customer satisfaction. And what have you heard? It may be interesting to talk about customer satisfaction with respect to the court, because of course they're here because they're coming to you because they have a ticket or a warrant. And so customer is maybe a funny word, but courts are being asked for customer satisfaction scores, or calling the people who come to see them customers. And so what have you heard from people about the online system? You know, a lot of times we hear nothing because these people that are going through it simply don't want to have contact with the court. They want to do it as quickly as possible and as easily as possible. They didn't want to have to call and be on hold. But the people that I have talked with, or that might write a response into something, find it pretty fast and pretty efficient. And they like that they didn't have to come to court. Because people are very terrified of coming to court.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we have the next couple slides. We pulled out some of those. Oh, people would recommend it. Let's keep going. Sorry, I want to make sure we get to the next. So these are some of the questions that are the responses people have left. There's a kind of a free response survey, a part of the survey. And I'll let Magistrate Doner talk through it.
And this comment is pretty common. You know, they had to say their piece about what happened, you know, and a lot of people aren't denying responsibility, but they want to let you know their reasons or motivations or some circumstances that you might not know about. So they feel like they're able to be heard and do it without missing work.
We slipped one in here since you saw the slide deck, Magistrate Doner. There's one more in the next one. Because of the distance, I wanted to make sure we spoke to that. So we found this one is one that's you haven't seen yet, but is letting us know that it would have taken this person 150 miles to get to court if they wanted to come for this particular ticket. So it's another one.
You know, you hear people, they have to take off a half a day of work or a whole day of work just so they can come and deal with it. So that's one of the best advantages.
Yeah. This is an example from the warrant.
So I said, so many people are either they have barriers to coming to court or they are just afraid that they're going to get arrested, and to know that they can resolve it online without the fear of being arrested is get a great sense of relief.
And then there's one more. That people who go through the ability to pay are very, very concise with the words that they're leaving in the customer responses.
And they're the ones that have the most to fill out online. So I think that's
maybe they're tired by the time they get to the screen.
Information.
Yeah, I should say, maybe it's not clear. This customer survey are issued after the case is completed. So these answers have no the case is complete. So these don't change. There's no benefit to the people for complimenting the system, right? Because it's the decision has been made. In case that's not clear. All right. So what's the next? Let's keep going. Yep. Okay. So we answered some questions along the way. So I hope you won't mind that we're a little bit late to the time that I suggested we would start with questions. But we did grab some that seemed timely as we went. We did get some questions from you as well when you signed up. So we have those. I have those in front of me. I would like to start with this question from Jessica Bennett. Do you think people have a better understanding of the outcome of their case when they use ODR? Maybe that's why they think it's a fair process. Do you have any response to that or any insight on that?
Never thought about that one. It could be that they feel like it's explained. Although when they come in, they usually get some responses too. But we, in our court at least, you know, there's a box in there that allows us to make a comment that's visible to the defendant. And our prosecutors and myself, we often use those just to answer the questions.
So they can ask and get their questions answered online. Yeah. Okay. Hopefully, Jessica, that addressed your question. I guess it is hard to know if anyone understands, but there are some abilities for the back and forth between to get their questions answered that may help. And there is supporting information, although like Magistrate Doner said, not everybody reads everything. So it's hard, it can be hard to know. One question that we had from, okay, follow up from Jessica. We'll finish this out. So she says her court is a high volume court. So people often feel that they are rushed and leave not completely sure what happened. So maybe that time to reflect and read could support that understanding. That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know if you have any other comments or you want me to move on to the next question. Nothing to add?
Nope, nothing to add.
So we got a question on the sort of intro when someone signed up from Catherine Stocks in Kansas, and she said, "How do you fund this without raising the cost to users or sacrificing fees sent to the state?" I'm not sure if that is a question that's easy for you to answer in your position.
Well, I mean, we don't, anything that's being dealt with online doesn't have a filing fee, so we're not sacrificing any filing fees. Because if you have a civil infraction ticket, you know, you're just not paying that. Any fines and costs that are assessed still include our state mandatory fees, so the state's still getting the same amount. But our court, we discussed, you know, whether or not there would be an increase in the fines to cover the cost of the ODR, and basically came to the conclusion that the convenience to the court, the saving of court staff and time and supplies and things like that would kind of accommodate for that additional cost. And so we did not raise our fines, and we've just sort of absorbed the cost. And so far it hasn't been an issue. And part of it is we are getting more revenue because people are paying more of their fines in a timely manner. So it's worked out well for us.
Thank you, Catherine, for that question. And thank you, Magistrate Doner, for the answer. I have a question from, Lori Hanson in Illinois. How can ODR benefit individuals with disabilities? I don't know if you have any insight into this, any stories you've heard or information you've heard from people who've I requested case review, if you have any insight into whether folks with disabilities have used the system. Do you?
I know of a few that have, and some of people, you know, if you have difficulties, you know, walking, our courthouse is not real handicap accessible or friendly. You know, district courts at the end of a very long hallway. So for people that come in, if they're in, you know, using walkers or crutches, canes, I've seen them, it's real hardship for them to just even physically access the court. So if they can do that from their homes, that is beneficial. I've even had cases where they came in and they, you know, especially if there's been some kind of an accident, they may be hospitalized or in some kind of treatment, and they can still access it online. So for disabilities in that respect, it is very beneficial. If someone has a vision or impairment, they would have to have someone assist them with their computer system. And the hearing impaired, it's much easier for them to do it online than for them to come to court and for us to make accommodations.
Unless there's other questions, there's a question here again on the intro from Patricia Mills in Tennessee. She asked, what positions or entities were instrumental in starting this ODR program? Did you work with your state's AOC on this effort?
I'm not sure what AOC is.
Oh, yeah, here it's SCAO. It's SCAO
okay,
here,
SCAO.
Yeah.
Yes, and we did, you know, consult with SCAO and make sure that everything that we were doing was acceptable and appropriate. As far as the parties that were involved in starting this, you know, we started with the court, and then we had our prosecutor's office involved. We had only minimal involvement with law enforcement. I know several other counties, the role that our prosecutor plays, some of their law enforcement officers are involved in that and actually doing the reviews and making the offers. But we coordinated mainly between the court and the prosecutor as to what kind of violations would be acceptable, how we were going to set up the program, that type of thing.
Thank you. I just noticed 2 questions are in the chat, so I'm going to loop back to them. Do you have, from Lisa Royal, do you have a sense of the percentage of your cases that are resolved through ODR?
Boy.
Yeah. And the answer might be no, and we can maybe try to get back to you.
Because it's kind of hard because some cases, there's still a large majority of civil infraction tickets that people simply pay and don't ask for anything on. I would say as far as people requesting in-person pretrials, the number that do it online vastly outnumbers the ones that are wanting.
Okay.
In fact, one of our township attorneys asked to join in for the online because it was inconvenient for him to come to court so much. So he much preferred it. So once we started off with our county prosecutor with our statutory violations, state violations, and then the city attorney for the city of Bay City, which is our largest municipality that issues ordinance violations. So we started prosecutor, quickly added the city attorney, and then, as I said, one of our larger townships asked to be involved because it was so much more efficient for him.
It's good to hear. There was a question from Maritza. I'm not sure if she's still with us, but she asked, is your ODR process mediation or more of a way to communicate a concern or dispute? I think she might have dropped off, actually. I don't see her on the attendee list.
The word mediation to me implies that the two parties are talking together to resolve their issue. And that would work. I know that there's some talk about getting it involved with, small claims and some of the front of the court issues or, child support and things like that. But really, you don't mediate with the prosecutor. You put forth what your violation is and what your request is, and you either take it or leave it from what the prosecutor offers. So, I mean, mediation does sound like maybe you can keep asking for something, and that's not quite the way it works.
Yeah.
Put it in, do I qualify for a reduction? And the prosecutor says yes or no.
I should say that there's other examples with ODR used for mediation, with mediators involved and sidebars and the like. That's not what we've got, what is happening in this court. But that is a very common use of ODR, so that may be what's driving that question.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Good news, yeah.
Since I do small claims too.
Right, you guys do small claims.
That would be nice.
Yeah, so I've got a couple questions from Milt. I think we might have answered, or one of them, his question was, do you have a sense of the number of cases closed successfully, % increase after implementing ODR?
An increase in how many have closed successfully?
My sense is the statistics that we've created before around changes in time to case closure and changes in that percentage of cases that default. I don't know on our side of a statistic about the cases closed successfully. Do you?
I do not.
Yeah. Sorry, Mel, we'll get you.
That one.
And then do you have a sense, I think we might have hit this one a little bit, which is how much time has implementing ODR saved the court staff? We talked about printing and mailing and the ability to fit things in when you can. I don't know if you have a number or any sense of that.
I don't, we haven't done, any type of an assessment of that, other than just the general feeling that we're spending a lot less time than we used to.
Well, that is good news. I know we're at 3:59. I want to make sure to thank Magistrate Doner and to invite you all to next month's webinar. We're going to be talking with the magistrate and court administrator in Livonia, and they'll talk about how they started and how they gradually sort of grew their case volume over time. And that may get to answer a little bit of Andrew Dane's questions too. Thank you so much, Magistrate Doner. I really appreciate your willingness to take time out of your day and share your experience and what the District Court in Bay County has achieved. And I want to thank all of you who participated and asked great questions and stayed, made an hour of your time as well to talk with us. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.